do this. Okay, so I read, this is introduction to this book, and uh, this essay is about literary criticism in contemporary India. It is an attempt to describe what is recognized by common agreement to be a crisis in Indian criticism and to explain it in historical terms. It does not aim at offering an analysis of theoretical position in vogue. I believe that it will not be possible to formulate fresh and meaningful question of a theoretical nature in the context of contemporary Indian literature without having established first the historical parameters of this field of activity. A perspective of literature and literary criticism with a greater self-awareness, a more accurate knowledge of native tradition, and an insight into their modern transformation are preconditions for initiating relevant and useful debates about the function and practice of literary criticism. That perspective will make it easier for Indian critics to propose theoretical formulation. Essay is about literary criticism in contemporary India, and it is an attempt to describe what is recognized common agreement to be a crisis. So, crisis in Indian literary criticism. So, one thing is the crisis in Indian crisis in Indian, okay, criticism. So this is one area, this crisis in Indian criticism. And he says he is using the method of historical, say, explain in historical terms. Historical terms. Okay, so one thing is that he does not uh, dissociate this crisis from the historical uh, periods. Okay, this is there. Now, third thing is that the I believe that it will not be possible to formulate fresh and meaningful questions of a theoretical nature in the context of contemporary Indian literature without having established first the historical parameters of this field of activity. A perspective of literature and literary criticism with a greater self-awareness, a more accurate knowledge of native tradition. Now, we can't develop a new perspective unless we are clear about so about this problem. Okay, if we want to understand more about this, and then if we develop a perspective, okay, so this perspective has to be in perspective. This perspective should be of literature and literary criticism with greater self-awareness. uh, literary criticism uh, should be uh, now should be based on with greater self-awareness, greater self-awareness, accurate knowledge, more accurate knowledge of native traditions, and an insight into their modern transformation. Okay, and are preconditions for initiating relevant and useful debates. So these are preconditions. Conditions for initiating a debate. Okay, so what we know here is clear that in the introduction part, he has introduced the problem of this essay. Okay, the problem of this essay is about the problem of this essay is that tradition and change in Indian literary criticism. Uh, this book, okay, uh, this book And the introduction to this book, okay. So this introduction uh, is about this, the crisis in Indian criticism. To explain it in historical terms, this is what the author wants to. And then, if you further want a solution, or uh, we take it further to explore uh, how to deal with this, then we should be ready to understand the preconditions for initiating a debate. Now, what are those preconditions? Preconditions are these. Uh, okay, preconditions are these. The perspective has to be this of literary and literary criticism, and then with greater self-awareness. This is the precondition. If you are not self-aware, self-awareness means that to be aware what, who you are, what is your culture, what is your tradition, how history has dealt with your culture, and then more accurate knowledge of your native tradition. So again, you see, it's more accurate means that not just uh, what we generally say, this is what we are and this is the food that we eat, but get more accurate. And to get more accurate knowledge, because there is an amnesia, there is, you see, we have suffered a memory loss. We have suffered a memory loss. For example, between two memories, transfer of memory, okay, has not taken place. Is because of some several reasons, including the colonization, which is a major reason, and then colonization within, and then new languages, new literatures, new idea of criticism occurred to us, say, for last 200 years. 19th century and 20th century has altogether given us a new culture of literature. The idea of literature has changed because of colonization. So print media, print culture, in a way, and then literacy, modernity, all of that also created its own impact on readership, on authorship, on publishing. And then European teachers who initiated modern education here in India, they brought literary criticism from their countries. So our idea of literature and our idea of literary criticism was wholly, in a major way influenced by the way they see their literary criticism and their literature. So that actually led to amnesia, that led to memory loss. And I'm simplifying it. The problem is more complex than this. So, so he says, well, do you have a greater self-awareness? So if you think that if you live a life which is colonized in terms of your mind, decolonization of mind, for example, so if you live that life and if you are going to lead that life, then you cannot trace the bank of your literature or the memory, the loss that is there. So you have to, now you cannot retrieve it from your minds because your minds did not were not uh, were not exposed to this kind of culture, and then insight into their modern transformations. And then we have to see how we can actually develop that modern transformation. This is the problem of the essay. I mean, you, I think, understand what this book and this introduction wants to speak about. If we know the problem, and if we know the hypothesis, and if we know the supporting material, the sources from where the author or researcher will prove the hypothesis, and then other aspects, that we understand what is there in the essay.